The Holy Bible, the King James Version. The Book of Psalms, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.
Hello. Welcome to Toronto Bible Study. I'm your host, Mike Sampat, and today we're going to talk about epistemology. That is the theory of knowledge. How do we know what we know? We'll talk about some more of that. We talked last time about the cross and the resurrection and how we know that this is a real event, and compare it to other theories and why those are weaker, or why we would say those are weaker, right? And we're using a systematic method here. We're not just pulling this biased way of determining these things, right? So I'm going to show you my method a little bit more today. Russ, how are you, sir? God bless you. Thanks for joining. Frank, hello. How are you, sir? Thanks for joining, brother. All right, let's take a look at this thing that I have here. Epistemology reset number 2. I guess it's a little bit not centered very well, but that's the idea. Deduction, induction, and abduction. And why we get tricked, okay? So we're going to talk about these things. Hang on. Sorry, my notes are all over the place here. As usual, my notes are confused. I'm always a little bit late, you guys. That's a problem. Okay, so slide 1 here. Right, so we're going to talk about how we reason, deduction, induction, and abduction, and why people get tricked. So I'm doing this because I've overreached before, right? I've gone on a little bit of evidence. I've made I've overreached and made claims and conclusions that weren't really proven. And I treated this kind of reasoning, what we call abduction here, which is inference to the best explanation. I treated that as proven facts. So this is a series that's correcting that in public without losing our edge here, without losing our backbone, okay? But it's not a flat earth debate stream. This is a stream about methodology. And we're going to use one case study which is related to the flat earth because I have been discussing that with you. But we'll talk about some other things as well. If you don't like my conclusion later, just challenge the standards I'm using. Challenge my method, okay? Rather than challenging just my conclusions, because we could debate that all day, you know? But challenge the method, and maybe you have a better method, all right? So let's talk about that. Excuse me. So the standard we're using. So we're going to have these ABC confidence tiers. That is, A is like the secure baseline things that we agree, almost everyone agrees is true. For example, with the cross, with the resurrection, we were saying that almost all scholars agree that Jesus was a real person, that he died of crucifixion by Pontius Pilate, and that he was buried, etc. And that Paul converted after being opposed to Christianity. This is almost universally agreed on by scholars of the period. That's what we would consider to be the A tier. And B is strong evidence exists for these claims, but they're conditional. We're not sure 100%. We're not, none of them are we sure 100%, but for B, it's like strong evidence, but it's still kind of iffy. And then C is they're strongly contested claims. Okay, they cannot carry the whole case. So that's what we call our confidence tiers of evidence when we make these kind of inference to the best explanation type examples. Okay. And we're gonna steel man rivals. That is, hi Lucas. That is TS. Okay, buddy. Hey, thanks. Thanks very much. Anyway, steel manning rivals is about stating the other side's argument fairly and giving them a fair hearing. You know, like not trying to weaken their argument and then attack that straw man. We're instead going to steel man, then we're going to give them a fair hearing. Okay. And I mean, if we can state the other side fairly, then we're not ready to critique it. And what would change my mind is that we have to be able to name certain things that would disconfirm our theory. And if you don't have that, then you shouldn't speak with certainty about any theory. If you're not able to name certain possible things that would, if they happened or if the evidence was found, then that would disconfirm your theory or disprove your theory, then you shouldn't hold that theory with certainty. That's what we call falsifiability. A theory should be able to be falsified. Otherwise, it's basically a religion. Okay? So we're not going to be immune to disproof. There's always something, any theory that we hold to, it's possible to be disproven. All right, we're going to have that kind of discipline, or I'm going to have that kind of discipline. I hope you will as well. I don't want to treat pushback against my theories as proof of some kind of deception. That's a trap. So from now on, if I can state what would change my mind, I'm not going to claim certainty, okay? Now, the first category is deduction. Hey, FreeGrace, how are you, brother? Hey, King10, how are you, bro? God bless. Thanks for joining, buddy. Okay, so I'm sorry, all my titles are on the other side. I don't know why. Anyway, deduction. So these are like the deductive, like the syllogisms, like that kind of reasoning. You know, you can make inductive syllogisms as well, but just for generally, we have deduction. We think of those kind of arguments. So it's like if the premises are true and the logic is valid, then the conclusion must follow. That is, for example, if all men must die, premise 1. Premise 2, Socrates is a man. Then that means, conclusion, Socrates must die. Okay, this is like if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. Okay, that's deduction. All right. So this shines in areas like logic, math, theology as well, because there's certain things that we hold to as dogmatic truths in theology. So we can use those as premises in our arguments. And we can develop that kind of reasoning in theology, logic, math, etc. Not always in theology, though, especially in biblical interpretation, right? Which is kind of another field as well, but we'll talk about that. This type of reasoning does not work well in real-world disputes, all right? Because generally in real-world discussions, the premises are not like surely given. They're not 100% known. And so they're generally our discussions about real world things are not purely deductive. They're either inductive or abductive, which we'll talk about, okay? So deduction is powerful, but it's only as good as the premises. And if your premises are wrong, then your whole thing is wrong. And also you have to be able to use the logic properly. Okay? But generally the big thing that we see here is hidden premises. People will make a syllogism, but there's a hidden kind of premise there that they don't tell you about, you know? And that's where you have to look for, okay? But we'll talk about that. I saw Hebrews. Yeah, I know that was so bad. That's good. Good. Keep working on it, bro. Hey, typical. God bless, bro. Okay, so the hidden assumptions idea is this. People will say it follows logically, but then they smuggle in these premises, right? So they'll make a syllogism, like I was telling you. All men must die. All men must die. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates must die, right? But if I said to you, all men must die, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates must die on Wednesday, that doesn't follow, right? There's a hidden premise. There's a hidden premise that they're not telling you about, right? And so obviously most of those kind of arguments are not that easy to spot, but that's the type of thing they'll do. They'll sneak in something that you won't realize, you know? The other problem is category errors. So my example here is demanding lab proof for history. So in history, like when we talk about the resurrection, we have these evidences. Okay, most scholars agree that Christ died on a cross, and that he was buried, and that Paul was converted. So that's high evidence. The notion of an empty tomb, however, is debated. The notion that there was that the disciples all agreed that they saw Jesus, that's debated, right? So these things are kind of so there's this inference to the best explanation type reasoning in history, right? But if you demand this kind of lab proof for it, you're not understanding history. The reason why we accept the resurrection is because when all the evidence is considered together, it's the best explanation. It's not something we can test in a lab. It's not something we can observe, right? So it's a different kind of evidence. So demanding that kind of evidence for the resurrection proof, quote unquote, is a category error. Okay. So with the Earth shape, for instance, if people say that we should be able to see the curve anytime, that's not really a proper understanding of the evidence, right? Because the world is so big that we wouldn't be able to see the curve. It doesn't exist, right? So, and then another thing that people will do is they'll bring in these false dilemmas. Like they'll say, if you don't have perfect proof for the resurrection, then I don't believe it. Or if you can't prove God, then I don't believe it. Well, that's not one of these things that we can just prove to you. That doesn't mean it's not true. There's many things that we believe that we can't really prove in that way, but it's just quite clear that it's the case. Everybody believes that Caesar crossed the Rubicon. It's not disputed. The evidence that Jesus rose from the dead is pretty much as strong or stronger than the evidence that Caesar crossed the Rubicon. But there's this debate, you know. So and another problem is that often people make these bad deductions, but it looks like confidence because they just have it all written out in a nice syllogism and it sounds good. But you have to examine the premises carefully, okay? Most empirical claims, though, are inductive. That's what we're going to look at now. Induction. So induction is when we say, okay, we repeatedly view the same kind of phenomenon, and then we generalize that as probably that's always like that. So, for example, every day we see the sun rise in the east and set in the west. So we say to ourselves, okay, well, probably that's always how it is. And that's why every day when we look for the sunrise, we look in the east, and we look for the sun to set, we look in the west. And it's because that's just the way it's always been. And so it's a good conclusion. It's a fairly good reasoning that that's how it's going to be tomorrow. But it's not clear. We don't know for sure what's going to happen tomorrow. what happened in the past doesn't prove what's going to happen in the future. Another example would be when we test like electricity going through a wire. When you send electricity through the wire, it makes a magnetic field. You can test that. Every time we do it, the same magnetic field happens. Stronger the electricity, the more magnetic field. So we have good reason to believe that this always happens. But if we ever ran this type of experiment and it didn't happen, we'd have to think, well, maybe our theory is not quite right. Maybe if it's too cold out, or sorry, too hot out, then you might get this resistance in the wire, and then it doesn't have electricity. It doesn't have a magnetic field. So you wouldn't just abandon the theory, but you'd have to adjust it, right? So that's how induction is not perfect evidence, perfect truth, producing logic like deduction, but it can be very strong. When you test the notion that every time electricity goes through a wire, you get a magnetic field. You test that again and again and again, hundreds, thousands, millions of times. You create technology with it. You create electromagnets. You create even the speakers in your headphones use that principle, right? So when you repeat this thing again and again, it's a very strong argument. However, it's never the level of like a theorem, like all triangles have three sides. It's never that level of truth. It's always like very, very strong, but it might be disproven in the future. We never know. Okay. So what strengthens induction is when you have a proper sample size. That is, if you tested with many tests, many times we've tested this notion of electromagnetism. We tested it so many times that we're sure that it works. Or if we test 100 people with a new medicine, that's strong. We test 1,000 people, that's stronger. If we still get the same result, test 10,000 people, then now it's getting stronger and stronger, right? Also, the quality of your measurements, it makes a big difference here. How accurate was it? How precise are your measurements, right? And also the conditions that you're comparing these experiments. If you do an experiment on the new medicine for these people in Canada, but all the people are also extremely really, really fit and really in good shape, and you compare that to another test in some other country, well, all the people were in really bad shape. It may be that the bad shape is why the medicine didn't work as well, right? So you want to have comparable conditions, comparable samples. And that's the way to allow you to make sure your inductive test, your induction logic is working well, okay? So this is one where people will say, I saw it happen, and they assume that means it's established as proof, right? But there's some traps that can ruin your induction, and you want to be careful with those, okay? Hey, Saville, how are you, sir? God bless. Okay. Hey, how are you, brother? God bless, man. So the pitfalls of induction. Sometimes people will give you an anecdotal evidence. That is, they'll tell you a story. Like, I saw this happen, therefore that's how it works. But that's just one story. Like, we need a data set. We need a sample. We need a few, at least a few instances of this happening. Then we can say, okay, there's a pattern here. Maybe every time it always works that way. And then there's also a problem called selection bias or confirmation bias, where people will say, well, every time I think about this thing happening, it always works that way. Every time I turn on the news, I see the number 33, so that means that it's Freemasons. But I mean, I'm somebody who brings that up as well, right? And I'm not saying that's impossible. But we have to be careful that we don't fall into this trap of selection bias, okay? And then you have uncontrolled variables. So Sometimes people will talk about an observation that they've seen, but there's other variables that they're not controlling for and not looking at. The weather, the terrain, the optics. We'll talk about that with this flat earth sightings. Okay? And also to replicate these experiments. Remember I was saying to you that induction is something where I'll do a test, and then another person will do a test, then another one, and another one, and until it's thousands of tests. So they make technology with this principle, so they start doing it a million times. Then we think it's very strong, right? We have to make sure that the conditions are comparable. So doing the same thing again isn't really reproducing the same thing if there's different conditions, the atmosphere or the weather or something else, right? If there's different conditions, that could change it. It's not reproducing the same effect. Okay? So if there's some kind of unmeasured variable in your experiments and that dominates the test, then your experiment can't really carry this kind of metaphysical certainty that some people think, okay? And that brings us to abduction, which is where most of this type of internet thinking kind of gets its certainty from. And I've fallen prey to this as well. So abduction is inference to the best explanation. So you look at the data, you look at the phenomenon, whatever it is, you try to explain it with a model, okay? So we looked at the data for the resurrection, and there's different ways to explain the data, okay? Maybe Jesus rose from the dead, that's our explanation. Maybe his disciples were hallucinating, and other people that saw him were hallucinating, and it was just all a kind of group delusion. Okay, maybe they were lying, maybe it was a trick to make money, right? So we compare these different models or theories about the incident and see which ones we rank the different explanations based on how well they explain the data. Okay, so it's not deduction like the first type. That's literal proof. And it's not induction where you're repeatedly testing the same idea again and again. Instead, this is like you're making a judgment based on different evidence that you have, and you're making it so there's like you're rating different explanations and their power to explain it. Okay. So an example would be if you had a wet umbrella. Let's say you're upstairs, you come downstairs, you see a wet umbrella in the hallway by the door. So you might say to yourself, well, okay, if it's a wet umbrella, probably it's raining outside. That's reasonable, right? But it's possible that you didn't know something. Maybe what you didn't know is that your kid, while you were sleeping, your kid went outside and was playing with the kid next door, and the kid next door was spraying him with the hose, and he pulled out the umbrella and he was shielding himself from the hose. And then when he came back inside, he put the umbrella down in the hall and he went back to his room. You weren't aware of that, so you just came down, you saw a wet umbrella, and you assumed it was raining. It's a reasonable inference, but because you didn't have all the data, you made a wrong inference. That's all that happened there, right? And that can happen with this type of reasoning. All right. So a lot of times when we're thinking about things, we're not thinking carefully. We treat this kind of reasoning, abduction, as if it's like deduction. And the best explanation becomes, oh, therefore it's proven, you know? And we do that. I do that on my side, and that's why I'm trying to get away from it now. Also, other people do that. For example, evolutionists will say that their theory is proven. It's proven. But no, it's just the best explanation of the data we have right now. We might come up with more data in the future, and that would change everything. Right? Just like the umbrella in the hall, right? So that's how this logic is useful. This way of using logic is useful, it is reasonable to think that when you see a wet umbrella, that probably is raining outside, or at least it was. Right? That's a reasonable inference. But there's definitely potential to make big mistakes here. So we have to be careful. We have to be disciplined about it. We're not going to reject this type of reasoning. It's a good type of reasoning, but we're not also going to be disciplined about how we employ it. Okay? So that's why I was showing you last time. I showed you a grid of how we can use this type of reasoning. So you have the scope, the inference to the best explanation, right? So the scope is, how much does your theory explain? How much of the data does your theory explain? And most theories will explain much of it, or all of it, or sometimes there's little things missing, but they say, okay, it's the best thing we have still. So that's one aspect. Then you have explanatory power. This is like, how well does your theory explain the data? Okay. And then you have the idea of explanatory cost. That is, sometimes in order for your theory to work, you need to kind of patch little holes in it. And what they'll do is they'll just kind of come up with something like, oh, well, we don't know, but maybe this is what it is, you know? For example, when they say that, let me think of an example here. When they say that, when they say that evolution happened from a single common ancestor, right? All the species on Earth came from one common ancestor, right? They don't really have an explanation for how that common ancestor came to be, what they call abiogenesis, right? So what they do is they just say, well, we'll figure it out. Eventually, we don't know right now, but eventually we'll figure it out, you know? And so that's like an ad hoc kind of thing. Why should we figure it out? What if it's not possible to figure that out? What if that's just not possible at all? We've never observed it, right? So this is like a major weakness in evolution theory. And so they have to ad hoc patch it. If you have too many of those ad hoc patches, your theory becomes weak and it should be rejected, okay? And then you have fit, which is the coherence with other background constraints. So that is, for example, there may be other information that we accept already that we consider to be very factual. Okay? So we say to ourselves, okay, well, if this theory doesn't fit in with those, then it's no good. You know? If evolution is okay, or they consider it to be strong theory in their eyes because other information that they have about like the age of the earth from geology or other things, they'll say, well, okay, these are all predicting a very old earth, so that's okay. That theory's it fits. Okay. That's how we kind of assess different explanations. All right. Hey, Abo. God bless, bro. Thanks for joining, man. So when you see the fits, when you have a good fit, doesn't mean mainstream wins, right? It just means that it's like, does this theory fight too many of the constraints? And if it doesn't, then it's a good fit. If it does, then it's not a good fit, right? It doesn't mean that you just go with whatever's mainstream or whatever is normally thought of, but it should fit in with what you already believe or what you already kind of consider to be factual. But it may be that you have to reconsider your facts as well, what you consider factual as well. So all these things are kind of in play, all right? Now, before I go into this flat earth stuff, I wanted to say this, that we don't want to bundle our faith with these type of reasonings either, okay? So some people, they think like, okay, well, if flat earth doesn't work, then the Bible is false. Or if evolution is true. Well, even if, I mean, I wouldn't even say evolution is true. I wouldn't even go there, right? But I'm just saying, people think like if this theory falls apart, this other theory I have, then the Bible will fall apart. But that's not true. The Bible is the one that we consider to be true. Like that's just true, you know? And I'm not here to make you doubt the Bible at all, okay? I'm here to make you doubt bad arguments. And arguments that I used to kind of teach you guys or push or whatever, and now I'm trying to say, well, they're not as strong as I thought, and I'm rethinking them, okay? Because a lot of people bundle their faith in God into a whole package of theories, but that's not good. Your faith in God should be the strength. That's the one thing that you stand on. And the other theories come in later, right? So level 1 is Christ, the gospel, the resurrection, and also like scripture itself, the Bible as the true word of God. Those are your foundational truths. Those are things that you should believe no matter what, you know? At least, I mean, I'm not saying no matter what, but there's very strong evidence for these, so that's why we believe them, right? As we go on now, there's other things that may be a little bit weaker. So, for example, the clear central teachings of Scripture, such as creation, fall, redemption, and other core doctrines, those are also very strong. But we may reconsider them, or we'll have a debate about them. Yeah, we don't debate the notion that Jesus rose from the dead. That's not debatable for Christians, right? That's just, we call that the dogma of the faith, right? It's just a given. We might debate something like the Trinity. I'm not saying that I would ever doubt the Trinity, but it's like, we'll have the discussion, you know? I won't even have the discussion. If somebody wants to try to debate me that Jesus never rose from the dead, then you're just not even. I mean, if someone's like if a non-believer wants to debate it, well, then we can have the discussion, right? But I'm not gonna have this. I'm not gonna entertain this kind of discussion with a Christian or what have you, right? Similarly, the Trinity or the creation accounts, etc. We can have some discussion about it, you know. And then also, when it comes to the creation story, there's other things within that story that are debatable as well. So that's level 3. So, for example, the details of the story, like the timelines, how long did it all take? What were the mechanisms? How did God actually create it? How did the flood happen? Did the flood happen because of rain? Was it rain only, or was it this fountains of the deep? What are the fountains of the deep? Are the fountains of the deep, are they like underwater geysers? Are they something else? You know, that's debatable, right? So that's level 3. And then level 4 is what I would call the speculative claims of science, such as evolution theory, old Earth, and these type of things. I would consider them to be very speculative. Okay, so if a level 4 claim collapses, obviously Christianity doesn't matter, right? Doesn't care about that. Or even our own speculative claims. Like I might say something like to you, like, oh, before the flood, there was a worldwide society of high technology people who were like some giants and stuff, right? So that's a theory, but that's speculation, right? The Bible doesn't really go into detail about those things. It may not be exactly that kind of level of society back then. So for me to give you that idea is kind of overstating the case, right? That's speculation on my side. So if those type of claims about those type of speculative claims that they fall apart, Christianity's fine, right? No problem. So the idea is that God doesn't need these fragile type of theories. And flat earth is kind of one of those theories where people will say flat earth because certain things in the Bible seem to point that way. And certain things in our society seem to point to like the idea that space travel is fake or whatever. There's certain things that are we could consider evidence for the notion that the earth is flat. But if that theory falls apart, the Bible is still strong. You don't need that theory to hold up the Bible. Okay? And that's what I want to be clear about, because I don't want anyone to doubt the word of God, right? Now, I want to talk about like why some of these flat earth observations are compelling, okay? Some of these observations are real. So if you send a laser across a lake, it'll come on the other side, and you'll see the target is hit by the laser on the other side of the lake, right? And it's like, oh, well, that's too far away. It's normally, if it's so far away, that target is so far away that it should be hidden behind the curve. And if it isn't, that's because there's some kind of it's because the earth is flat, right? That's what often we'll see, those type of ideas. Or we'll just have people looking through a telescope, or not a telescope, they're looking through like a long camera, like a P90 or whatever, and they'll see some landmark in the distance, and they'll say, oh, well, that shouldn't be possible to see. So when you see those things, you can feel like it's decisive, like, wow, that thing's too far away. It should be hidden behind a curve. So if we can see it, then that means the earth can't be flat, right? And so, and also we've never seen the curve. You can't see the curve. Even in an airplane, you can't see it. So it's like, well, where's the curve? So if there's no curve, we can't see the curve. That's hard to square with the round earth. So I do sympathize with that, and I, of course, kind of believed all those type of arguments before, right? But the other problem is that a lot of the people, when the globe people, when they want to debunk flat earthers, their debunking is very arrogant at times and also very lazy. So they present evidences that we're like, well, no, that doesn't prove it at all, right? So then people are just like, well, that starts to push people away from globe Earth, because they're being arrogant, they're being insulting. If you're just questioning it, they treat you like you're like stupid or something, right? And so that will push people away. And most of these videos, if you look at these videos online about proving the supposed round Earth, they present things which do kind of lean that way, but they easily could prove something else as well. There's no reason to think, for example, that Eratosthenes' experiment, that the only explanation for it is around Earth. There could be if it was the local sun, it would produce a similar effect. So that's the type of thing that turns people off, right? So before we think about these things, we want to classify the claim. Classify the claim, okay? So this is a table here. You can say, okay, I saw X, and then you make the inference, therefore the earth is flat. Well, there could be other probable things. I looked across the lake, I saw, this landmark there that should be hidden behind the curve of the earth, but I can see it. Therefore, the earth is flat, right? That's a too quick of an inference. There can be things like atmospheric refraction. There can be things like the elevation of what altitude are you above sea level, and the terrain, and the perspective, and all these things can change actually what you're looking at, right? So all that has to be carefully determined before you can make a claim like, oh, the earth is flat. I saw this, therefore the earth is flat, right? And they'll say something like, yeah, the laser stayed level, therefore there's no curvature. But there is a possibility that the laser was bent by the atmosphere as well. Especially over water. You can see this effect. This effect has been studied by scientists, okay? So all these type of things, they have other explanations. The idea of seeing a landmark too far over the water, it could be other things like inversions based on the light, right? So that's just the atmosphere doing all the work. So that means it's not a test of the geometry of the earth, it's more a test of like atmospheric gradients, the weather, basically, right? So let's look at this more disciplined in a more disciplined way, okay? So with the laser test for the ABC of the claims, your secure claim would be that, okay, long distance results, from a long distance, you can see this object, and this that is a secure fact of the matter. No one can deny that, okay? When you look over the water, you can generally or very often see this landmark or what have you, okay? Or with the laser, you can send the laser and it will see, it will hit the target, okay? But sometimes there's variability in these results. And sometimes they actually exceed the straight line expectations that you expect. So the fact that there's this variability in the results shows that it's not necessarily always about the shape of the earth. It's sometimes about the condition of the atmosphere and the gradients, the atmospheric gradients, and these type of things. Okay, that can affect your results in these experiments. Okay, so we'll talk about tier C in a minute, but let me just move on to B. So B here is that these are the more strong conditional claims. Okay, they're strong claims still, but they're conditional. So near surface over the water, you have a very strong gradients of refraction. All right. And so because of that, many lake laser tests, they don't really isolate the geometry of the earth because they don't measure the atmosphere. They don't actually carefully check the altitude of both the sender and the targets. And they don't check all those factors very carefully as you should, right? So that's not me coping. That's just like, if you're going to run the experiment, you have to do this. You have to check all those variables very carefully, the altitude especially, and also the atmosphere. If you don't check those things, then you're not doing an experiment. You're just trying to show something on the internet that says and say pretend that means that proves a flat earth, okay? And that's not okay. But then some of the weaker claims are this. So this, just the fact that you one time saw a laser go over a lake and hit a target doesn't itself falsify the idea of a curved earth. Okay, there could be other explanations. We talked about atmospheric refraction. So this is not a strong claim. And the idea that these happen in all conditions, so refraction can't be the cause, well, that's not necessarily the case either, because it could be that refraction happens in all conditions, you know? But we generally don't see that, so it may be that we can test this theory further, but the problem with this idea is that we have other evidence of a round Earth, you know? But I'll show you that in a minute. But just rejecting these claims doesn't really isolate, or if you reject these two claims right here, then it shows you that the test doesn't isolate the geometry of the earth. There's other possibilities here. So what would change my mind? Now, if they actually did these tests, when you see these people do these tests online and the internet, on YouTube and stuff, where they're testing to look at a landmark in the distance, or they're shining the laser, right? If they actually check the altitude that they're at and of the targets carefully, checked it carefully, right? And they measured the distance very carefully and the terrain and the water level, and they checked all those things, okay, then that would be a good reason to say they're taking the test seriously. They should also do repeated runs across many days. In fact, they should do it in different weather conditions. So you try it on a sunny day, on a cloudy day, try it on a winter day, on a summer day. Try it in these different conditions. If it repeatedly results in the same thing, then we can say, okay, this is a strong result. Because then you're controlling for the atmospheric conditions. No matter what the atmosphere is doing, you still get the same results. But nobody does that. Nobody does that. When they do these things, they'll do one test and then they'll just go home. They'll pack it up. And maybe it's because they don't have the resources, but maybe it's because they don't care to do a proper test. They just want to kind of have this thing they can put online. Okay. And then meteorological profiling. So what you would want to do is you could check the meteorological surveys on different heights, the temperatures of the atmosphere at different heights, and etc. Also turbulence and these type of things. And so those type of things should be all measured and should be all recorded if you're in your data, if you're going to do this kind of test, okay? And also there should be pre-registered predictions for both models. If the earth is round, this is what we'll see. If the earth is flat, then this is what we'll see. And once again, test it over multiple days. And your predictions should be this on whatever days, okay? Depending on, and also it's all, your models, your predictions here should take account of all these different heights, distance, and the weather, all that. This is how science is done. This is how proper experiments are done, right? So, and also they should have disconfirmers stated in advance. That is, what would also you would want to check the predictions for temperature, humidity, and pressure as well. You want to check that at different levels in the atmosphere, okay? So, and also you would want to have disconfirmers stated in advance. That is, what would cause you to disbelieve your theory? What would disprove your hypothesis? And you should know those things. If you see those things, then that disproves it. Okay, fine. Then we know that we have some kind of proper test here. All right. So that would force both sides to show their work, and it prevents cherry picking, right? And it turns the debate into a real test. Now, the thing is, on the side of the round earthers, there are many tests of this type of thing where you have, where they're testing the atmospheric refraction over bodies of water, etc., and the difference in the horizon and this type of thing, right? They've already tested this numerous times. I'm gonna have a handout later. I'll put it in the description. But this is certainly something that peer-reviewed scientists have done, whereas the flat Earth community has not done this. Okay, so that is a major problem for those type of theories about this. Okay. I guess I should tell you. I guess I should talk about. I forgot to put a slide for this, but I did want to talk about why I changed my mind too. I talked to you about Southern Hemisphere navigation, right? Because the thing is, okay, there's problems with both of these theories, right? And what people on both sides tend to do is they hand wave the problems. For example, in the round Earth community, they often, I mean, I still believe the Earth is round, but even if you think like their theories about the cosmos are often very hand wavy. They'll talk to you about how there's dark matter and all this stuff, right? It's very like, well, what are you talking about? Dark matter? You can't see it, you can't test it. It's very ad hoc. It's one of those ad hoc patches, right? That they add on. So that makes their theory weak, right? And then on the flat earth side, they have there's also hand waving there. So one of the big things was southern hemisphere navigation. That is, why is it if the earth is flat and like the North Pole's in the middle and the South Pole is just going around the outside, right? If that's the shape of the earth, well then that would mean that when you're taking a boat from like Africa to South America or something, that should take like way longer, right? Because they'd be way further apart. And also, how do they navigate those type of regions of the world? By looking at the stars and using a sextant. They use this thing called a sextant where they measure the angle from the horizon to the star, and then they use that, and then based on these charts are based on a spherical earth, right? They use these charts to kind of determine their position and navigate that way, right? They've been doing that for hundreds of years. So that's long before, NASA or anything like that, right? So if they could do that with those devices, that's extremely strong reason to believe the earth is round, That's tested all the time, every day, basically, for hundreds of years. So, and like I say, for flat earthers, what we used to do is we would just hand wave that. We'd say, well, we don't know the map of the earth yet. There might be some map that we haven't figured it out yet, but there's a map out there that we can kind of develop that would solve that problem. And so that's how we would hand wave it. But now in the age of AI, you can kind of calculate a lot of that stuff. And you're not going to be able to come up with this map. So the problem is very difficult to overcome. So that's why I have to now kind of say that I can't hand wave this anymore. Right? So that's why I changed my mind, just so you're aware. And with these tests, like these laser tests the shoreline or seeing the object in the landmark in the distance, right? This is often it's like optics, right? So it might be the atmosphere, it might be the weather, it might be different things that are affecting it. The atmosphere acts like a kind of a lens and it bends the light. So the mere fact that we can see objects far away doesn't prove that the earth is round or that the earth is flat, okay? So that's why I changed my mind. I'm not saying that the sextant or any of these things proves the globe. But when you add things like the sextant and global navigation already that has occurred, and people just even driving, when you drive from like South America in the southern hemisphere, you just drive from one location to another. If it was the way that the flat earthers claim, that wouldn't be possible, So when you add up all these evidences, it's very difficult to explain this stuff away. So although we can't observe the round Earth, and I don't think we have, I don't believe in outer space. I still don't believe in space travel and stuff, and I will talk about that in another show. But I'm just saying that round Earth, at this point in my life, it seems to be very strong. I cannot overcome this theory, okay? So I'm retracting that view of flat Earth, okay? Now, what would change my mind? Oh, sorry. I already talked about this, but I didn't talk about this part. So, if they had like predictions for both models when they did their tests, right, and they were comparing them, what would refraction be on a sphere? What would refraction be on a flat Earth? And comparing those, and they're stating their disconfirmers. What would disprove my theory? And they had that kind of responsible epistemology, like I'm trying to show you here. Then that would make me rethink it, right? But when they test these theories, they don't do that. So I'm not okay with that. So that's why I've retracted my view on that. Okay. Mike, don't you kind of think Adam and Eve are Newton? No. If you're talking about the apple, I mean, Adam and Eve didn't really have an apple, you know. It's just the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, right? But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what can we see responsibly, okay? So some anomalies do appear in these theories, okay? And we need to analyze them honestly and not just accept things. That's why I'm telling you, I still don't believe in space travel. You know, there's just too many anomalies with this. I'm just not going to accept their claims. Their claims are not that well evidenced. Okay, now maybe I'll change my mind in the future on that. I don't know. At this time, though, I don't buy it. Okay. But the problem is many of these popular tests for so-called flat Earth, they do not isolate the geometry of the Earth. There can be other explanations for the results. When you look at it, when you look at an object in the distance, there's other reasons why you might see that. It's not always just all about the shape of the Earth. Okay. So the discipline move is to either produce a better test. If they did a really proper experiment showing those things, then I might reconsider. Okay, but at this time, they have not done that, so I'm not going to reconsider at this time. So my epistemology now is that I don't want to have, I'm not going to trust people naively just because they tell me some story. Of course, right? We're well aware that we don't do that. We're also not going to arrive at these paranoid theories and jump to conclusions. And I apologize if I let any of you into those kind of ways of thinking, but I also don't want you to continue on that path, okay? So we're not going to go by vibes. We're going to go by a disciplined epistemology. That's my choice. And like I say, if you disagree with me, well, you can disagree with me. That's totally fine, right? But let's talk about the standards of evidence I've given you here, and talk about why you disagree. Tell me why I should believe your explanation and not. You know, if you agree with me, well, good. But also, don't disagree with me because you like me. Agree with me because you've thought about these standards of evidence and it makes sense to you. And you might see me making some other theory or explaining some other thing where I don't use these standards of evidence properly. And then you can say, well, let's rethink this, Mike. Let's talk about this some more. Okay? I'm not switching sides. Okay? My side, I'm still on the same side of Jesus Christ. I'm against the devil. And I'm well aware that we live in a world of deception. So I'm still on the same side. But I am changing my standards, and I'm improving my standards so that we have a better standard of thinking, a better standard of reasoning here. Okay? I'm going to keep a high view of Scripture. Scripture is number one true 100%. I hold that to be the truth. Okay, but institutions that are developed by human beings are certainly subject to deceptive practices and just corruption. So we're going to be careful with how we accept their claims, okay? So the next episode, we're going to talk about science versus scientism. That is the method versus the metaphysics. Because science is a method, scientism, or the notion that whatever we learn from science is correct and should be trusted, that's a metaphysical claim. And that's very different than what the scientific method allows. Okay, so we're going to talk about that next time. And for now, that's it. That's it for the epistemology reset program. But now we're going to just hang out, or if you guys want, I'm just here to answer questions or whatever. And let's hang out and discuss. Okay, so what do we got? A poll. I see. Interesting. Thus, exposing Maastricht is An interesting fellow. I can say I'm now leaning more into round earth, but that doesn't mean it just proves the Bible. It has nothing to do with it. Exactly, not exactly. The Bible doesn't really go one way or another on round earth, or flat earth for that matter. The thing is, when they say stuff like, oh, the sun is rising or the sun is setting in the Bible, right? It's just like when we say that, we'll say the sun is rising, the sun is setting. It's not because we think the sun is the one moving. We generally in our society, we believe the earth is spinning, right? And the sun is kind of just there, right? But it's what they call phenomenological language. We're describing the phenomena, what we see, what we sense. We're describing that, right? So that's what the Bible does. So when it talks about like the earth being unmoving or stationary, that's just because that's how they sense the earth in their general writings, in their general life, But the Bible's not making the claim that the earth is literally stationary, We could talk about that some more. What do you guys think? Tell me what you guys think. Or it's okay, you don't have to. But I'm glad you're thinking about it, typical. You don't have to agree with me, but it's good that you're thinking about it. The whole problem of Southern Hemisphere navigation is huge. That's one thing that is very difficult to explain away, Now, if you guys want, I wanted to talk to you guys about another thing too. If you guys know this text in or that's the presentation on epistemology. Okay, that's over now. All right, yeah, we'll talk about it some more. You can ask me anything, and we can talk about it some more. Okay. And I'm gonna put a handout later on. I'm not done. I'm gonna put a handout later on that will give you some resources you can look into further to learn more about these subjects. That'll be in the description of this video. But for now, if you guys don't have any questions, I did want to talk to you about this other scriptural issue. Let me just remove this thing. Hang on. Where is it? Sorry. Okay. Okay. You may recall I've talked about you guys about this before. Deuteronomy 22, 28 to 29. This is often described as this command to a girl to marry her rapist. All right. And so it's used to sort of put down the Bible, right? That's my problem with it. But I want to talk to you guys about why that's not the case, and the Bible would never command any such thing. Actually, let me show you something. Let me show you something. Let me show you why I got mad about this the other day. I was on Breakfast Tacos. These guys. Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna leave.
Yeah.
I specifically came out here to say that Deuteronomy 22, 28 to 29 is not about rape. It's about seduction. It's the same law as Exodus, I believe 22, 16 to 17. Okay? If a man
What is wrong with you, dude? You don't understand? Like, come on. And then Jessica says it's called emotional blackmail. Great point. Thank you, Jessica.
It's not emotional blackmail. Like, you can't blackmail yourself.
Hold on, dude. I just want to make this one point clearly because people have been slandering the Bible here. I came here to say this. Deuteronomy 22, 28 to 29 is about seduction, not rape.
The majority of translations are lying.
We told you to stop slamming that word. You can come back tomorrow.
Now they kicked me right there, right? Because I keep saying the R word, rape. You know, on YouTube, if you see the R word too much, you get in trouble. I'm not good at that. I forget about that, right? Because I don't care about monetization, but he does. So they kicked me. But I do think he could have warned me again or something, you know? Yeah. But anyway, let's see what they say.
We'll just correct what TBS was saying because
correct his errors because he made a lot of errors there, and he also kept slamming that word for some reason when we asked him not to.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, I'm not good at that. I have ADHD. I forget things. Okay, that's all that happened there. I was not trying to get his show ruined or whatever.
But yeah, he was incorrect about that.
TBS, if that happens again, you will not be invited back on the channel. You do need to care about the monetization of my channel because the monetization of my channel is what allows me to host you.
True. Yeah, I don't like the fact that YouTube gets all weird and fussy about that, but I mean, here we are.
Just to correct his misinformation, though, the translation is the R word, and that's what's agreed by a lot of modern scholars, and it's in lots of versions of the Bible, including the New International Version that took 10 years to translate. And
so what he's saying to you now is the R word is the translation. That is 100%. He's saying that it is. And his evidence is that appears in lots of modern Bibles and is agreed on by lots of scholars. All right, let's hear what he said that again. That's his evidence. By
a lot of modern scholars. The translation is the R word, and that's what's agreed by a lot of modern scholars, and it's in lots of versions of the Bible, including
It's agreed on by lots of scholars, and it's in lots of versions of the Bible. That's not all scholars. It's not all versions of the Bible. So that's not universally agreed upon or anything. But he thinks it's 100% true. And his evidence is there's no kind of evidence from the text or from the Hebrew language or anything. He's just going to say this, that these experts agree on it, therefore it's true. That is a fallacy known as appeal to authority. And so when someone just says to you, well, all these experts agree, therefore it's true, that's not a good argument. As in his case, there's experts that disagree. There's many Bibles, modern Bibles, that do not agree with this translation. So it's just ridiculous, But anyway.
New International Version that took 10 years to translate, and there were over 100 evangelical scholars from different denominations that translated it. So I'm going to go with them rather than TBS's 20 minutes at a university studying Hebrew.
But see what he's doing? He's just going to go with them. Go with some experts. He has no argument from the text. No argument from the context or anything. That's how we analyze scripture, right? We look at the context, we look at the text, we look at the language. He's not going to do anything like that. He's just going to agree with the scholars, just go with them. And again, it's not the majority. It's not even most. It's just like a lot. That's what he said. A lot of scholars, a lot of modern versions. It's not the majority, not a lot, not everyone.
Right. I mean, even the King James Version, which a lot of people cite, it says, I don't even have to say the word. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her and lie with her. That doesn't sound like seduction to me.
Lay hold on her, right? He says that doesn't sound like seduction. Well, what does it sound like? What does it sound like? What does lay hold mean? The thing is, the King James is trying to make a very they just try to make a word for word translation. They don't want to interpret for you. They just want to give you the word, what it means. And lay hold is a very good way to say that word. Sometimes the word is tafas, and I'll show you it now. It means the word is tafas. It means like Wait. Why don't I just read this whole passage to you first? So we'll talk about the passage, okay? So there's a few other verses here that are significant. Excuse me. Let me see. Let me read from 23 here. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto an husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then he shall bring them both out unto the gate of that city, and he shall stone them with stones that they die. The damsel because she cried not, being in the city, and the man because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife. So shalt thou put away evil from among you. But if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her, and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, and the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. Because he hath humbled her, he may not put her away all his days. So this is the one that they're saying, because it says that the man has to give the damsel's father 50 shekels and then marry her forever. Their argument is that, that it's rape. But it's like, this is very difficult to prove from the text. And the context doesn't support this idea. But let's talk about this. You cannot handle this verse 28 without handling the other case laws that are surrounding it. All right? But let's see it. So the opposing view, when they look at this one, if a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her and lie with her, and the man only that lay with her shall die, right? So they say this is rape of a betrothed woman. That is, she's already engaged to a man, right? So the man dies because she's legally somebody's wife in a sense. She's not really married, but she's basically legally married. Okay? Whereas if the woman is not betrothed, as in this case, the damsel is a virgin, right? She's not betrothed, right? That means that she's not legally anybody's wife. So the penalty is different because the father's household rights are in view here, rather than adultery against the husband. So that's why they say there's a shift in punishment, because all they want to do is take care of the father's property rights over his daughter. And that's why all he has to do is pay the 50 shekels and marry her, and then it's taken care of. So it sounds like that explains the difference, right? But it actually doesn't fit the details carefully if you look at it carefully. That's why you always have to look at these things very carefully, okay? Now, the real distinction in Deuteronomy 22 is that it's not just betrothed versus unbetrothed. It's violent assault versus basically sexual intercourse that was consensual but illicit, like not permitted. Obviously, women in ancient Israel were not allowed to have sex, or no one was allowed to have sex outside of marriage, women or men, right? So if they did have sex, that was a major problem. So that's the difference here. One is a violent assault in 25. It says that he forced her, the man forced her, right? Whereas in 28, you don't have any of that language like forcing, okay? Let's look at this again. First, the man forced her and lie with her. That's the first thing. And look, it talks about how the damsel cried, the betrothed damsel cried, right? That's also important. And also, there was none to save her. See? So that's why you can see, and look how they compare it to, it's that this is for as when a man riseth against his neighbor and slayeth him, even so is this matter. See how they're comparing what they're comparing to this event here in this verse. So, and also this receives the death penalty. The man only that lay with her shall die. So the man dies for doing this. He forced himself on this woman. He dies. All right. There's no like, it's not like a joke. Now, when you see in this language here, it's not, they don't say force her, they say lay hold on her. Why don't they say force her? Why did they use force her in this one? In this one, they say force her, but here they say lay hold on her. Right? Oh. Right? And also, you see how they say, and they be found, and they be found? So it's like they be found. The two of them are found because the two of them are doing something wrong. The two of them are both, they both know they shouldn't have sex, but they're having sex. That's why they be found. It's not a matter of, oh, he be found or he forced her. It's not using that kind of language. It's a different kind of scenario here. Okay? And also the 50 shekels thing. Why would they say 50 shekels to pay 50 shekels? The other case is like death penalty. But this case is just, okay, 50 shekels and also a marriage obligation. Why would they want them to marry their rapist? Yeah. Does that make any sense? In the other case, they kill someone. They kill someone for raping them, right? They kill him, right? In this case, they just make the woman marry him. Does that make any sense whatsoever? You know? So it's like it's a careful reading of these texts would understand that legal situations don't work like that, where you punish one person for rape, you just kill them, and the other person you just let them get away with it and they just marry the person. That makes no sense, right? And also this idea that there's no divorce. She shall be his wife because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. He may not put her away all his days, right? So that's like saying that he can never divorce her. All right. So if Moses wanted this verse to be about a rape case, right? He had all the language in the previous verses to say that. Force her, death penalty, and all these other differences that we see in the other previous verses. And he could change the legal consequence because the woman is not betrothed. He could just keep the assault markers like force her and etc. You know, that he was using before. Force her. As a man rises. You know, these type of markers that he was using to show the force idea, the rape idea, right? And the damsel cried, right? If they had those kind of markers, then he could use that here, but he's not talking about a rape case here. It's a different kind of situation. That's why he doesn't use that language. So that's the first problem. Or that's one of the major problems. Or that's like, you could call that like argument one, that the immediate context distinguishes these two scenarios. These are not the same kind of scenario. They're very different, obviously, from the language, okay? So that's the first problem. Then, so what they were saying is that these people that agree with the rape thing, the rape translation, they say that because this woman is betrothed, that accounts for the differences. This woman is not. This woman is betrothed. This woman here is betrothed, okay? And this woman is not betrothed. So they say that accounts for the differences. And it's true, like, yes, betrothal does matter. It is basically like they're married. And a betrothed virgin, if a virgin is betrothed to a man, it's basically like they're married, okay? But the problem is this, that betrothal alone doesn't explain the text, the way the text changes the categories completely. If they both describe the same violent acts, why does this one say force her? You know? Force her. And this one says lay hold on her. Why do they use different verbs here? Right? And why does this one talk about how she cried? Right? The other one doesn't talk anything about it. It says they be found, right? And then also the fact that this one has a payment. This one the guy just pays 50 shekels. And the other one, he gets stoned to death. This is not the same scenario at all. They're not the same scenario. It's ridiculous to even suggest this, you know? So betrothal can explain some differences in the penalty. The fact that the betrothed people have a different penalty, it might explain some differences, but it doesn't explain the total change. The whole legal framing of these two scenarios is totally different, okay? And also, and the they be found thing is huge, okay? This is big because the issue here in this one, the issue is like there's a violent attack. The man forced her. He found her in a field. He forced her and lie with her. And then he has to die, right? Like, and also it talks about how unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin worthy of death. So they're mentioning the fact that she's innocent here. This is an important aspect of this scenario in 25 to 27 is the fact that she is innocent. She has done nothing worthy of death, whereas the man has, right? But there's nothing about that in 28 and 29. And also this fact that there was none to save her, right? There's no discussion of saving her in 28 and 29 because that's a different scenario, you know? And also, so in this one, you see that they be found. That's huge. Okay, they're doing something wrong, both of them. Not he be found, but they be found, right? And then he has to pay restitution. He has to pay restitution. The other guy got stoned to death. This guy's just paying restitution, right? And also he has to marry her. She shall be his wife. You know, why would you make him marry? Why would you make a woman marry a rapist? And why would you say that they can never divorce? Why is that a thing? You can never divorce her? Why? Why would that be a thing? Or why can't she? You know what I mean? Like, why is that the thing? So verse 28, when it says this, that they be found, it sounds like this act that they've done, it comes to light now. It's been revealed. And it's not like a woman who cried out during a violent assault, right? It says that they be found. They be found, right? So the focus is exposure of this wrongdoing and then a legal remedy for it. Not that they're rescuing her from a predator. So this leans toward our understanding, okay? So the whole thing fits the seduction, unlawful intercourse idea better than violent rape. All right. The law says, because he hath humbled her, right? He may not put her away all his days. He has humbled her. Now, this humbling thing, it sounds like a man being bound to some permanent responsibility for doing something, some kind of sexual act that was dishonoring to the woman, right? That fits the seduction or some kind of illicit sexual intercourse much better than a violent rape. Because if he had violently raped her, why would that humble her? You know, it's like there's nothing happened. Like nothing that she did was wrong there, right? So if you translate this as rape, the law is forcing a lifelong union between a rapist and his victim as a remedy for rape. When in the previous verse you had these people being stoned to death for rape. Right? So it doesn't naturally sound like that unless you force that reading into it. So they have to kind of carry the ugliness of that translation interpretation, yeah. Then there's another verse in Exodus 22. This is a different law. It's not the exact same law, but it's analogous. Okay, let's put it that way. If a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. So even if the father doesn't want them to marry, he still has to pay the dowry. Okay? And when it says he shall surely endow her to be his wife, that's pay the dowry. So in either scenario, he has to pay the dowry, whether he takes her to be his wife or not, right? That's the idea. The father might say, no. You seduced my wife. Entice here is seduction. This is no doubt seduction. This has nothing to do with rape, okay? But if he did do this, if you seduced a virgin and she's not betrothed, then you must marry her and pay the dowry. If the father refuses, then okay, you still have to pay the dowry. It doesn't matter. You can't just get out of this, okay? So now people will say, well, these are different laws. Fine, that's true. They're not word for word identical laws, but that's not the point, right? The point is that there's this legal category for unlawful intercourse with an unbetrothed virgin that results in a bride price being paid and marriage is in view. So we can see this principle is in effect in the law. These may not be the same law, but that principle is in effect. When you have a virgin that's having some kind of illicit sex and they're found out, then that means that they have to pay the dowry and get married. All right, so there's the parallels are unbetrothed virgin, intercourse, payment to the father, marriage is in view, and also the father's kind of authority is involved in all this. Okay, so Deuteronomy. So what this shows in Deuteronomy 28 to 29, the other one that we're talking about tonight, it certainly does not have to be read as rape. It could certainly be read as seduction, and that would fit with other legal evidence, legal data that we have in the law of Moses. Okay, it already fits the category. There's no reason to go to this rape conclusion. It's not necessary. Okay. So what could I say? Oh, by the way, the fact that the father can do this in Exodus, if her father utterly refuses her to give her unto him, she'll pay money according. So the father can just refuse it. He can just say, no. You seduced my daughter. I don't like you. I don't trust you. I don't want you to be my son-in-law. I'll take care of her. But give me the 50 shekels so I can have that money to take care of her. Okay? So that shows that if Deuteronomy 28 to 29 was rape, right? Then and so if there's a seduction and the father can block the marriage, but if there's a rape, he can't. He has to marry her off. Does that make any sense? That's weird. This is completely unbalanced. It makes the law like ridiculous, right? So it's like the law is protecting the girl in this one, which is just seduction. And then in this one, it's like less protection for the woman, So that makes also no sense. So that's completely backwards, all right? It's not impossible, but it's just saying, it's a very unnatural reading. It's just a very unnatural way to understand the law of Moses, okay? And then they also bring up this Hebrew verb here. This verb is lay hold on, tafas, okay? If you see at the bottom, I don't know if you can see that, but it says seize, handle, or use. So seize is that's where people get the rape idea. Because seize, sometimes it's used, this word tafas is used about violent acquisition. For example, they'll say that they took tafas the city. They took the city. That means they conquered the city, and things of that nature. So that's why they'll say seize. Okay, he seized her and then he lied with her. So it sounds like rape. He seized her and he lied with her. That's rapey, right? But it could also mean handle or use. Sometimes they'll use this word about like handling a harp, or the law. In Jeremiah, it says that they tafas the law. So they handle the law. They know how to handle it. They're skillful in using the law, So that shows you that it's not necessarily this violent seizure, okay? So the word has a range. And we have to determine the actual meaning in play based on the context. It doesn't necessarily mean seize. It can mean other things, right? So you don't want to just grab one definition of a word and just stick it into this context if it doesn't fit, right? That's important to your exegesis. Even if the verb can be sometimes used, forceful use, right? It doesn't prove that verse 28 here is that same violent crime. The immediate context controls the legal meaning. And then this other thing is he hath humbled her, because he hath humbled her, right? Ana. So using this verb, this point also needs some precision here, because they're assuming that this means rape. Oh, he humbled her because he raped her, right? But it could be that he humbled her because he seduced her. He the sexual wrongdoing that he convinced her to do has humbled her and made her like kind of less desirable as a wife, etc. So that's why it says that they can't divorce, I can show you some other examples like this. Here, Deuteronomy 21. Deuteronomy 21:14. It shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will. But thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her. Okay? Now this case is a case where they're married. This is a woman who was taken as a slave in a battle. All right? When they would conquer a city or whatever and take some women there as slaves, and one of the Hebrew soldiers wanted to marry one of the women, then there was laws for that, right? They had to like let her have a mourning period for her family. They had to shave her head. They had to like let her, then they would get married, and then he can't divorce her, or if he divorced her, he can't sell her. He has to just let her go free, right? So this shows that humble her here is not anything to do with rape. It's just because he married her, right? So there's uses of this word humble that are not related to rape necessarily. Now there are uses of this word humble, ana, which are related to rape. So I'm not going to say it's never that, but it's not always that. So that word's not some decisive clue or anything, okay? But when scripture wants to make the force idea explicit, it can do that by just simply stating that he was forced, as they did here. The man forced her, right? That's like they can do that. They know how to do that. They don't have to go into these weird other words. So, and then the idea that all the Bibles say this, that's not the case. There's other Bibles that do not say rape. The NIV says rape. It literally says, instead of saying lay hold on her and lie with her, these are two verbs, right? This is tafas and this is shakav, okay? So there's two verbs here. In some translations like the NIV, they take those two verbs and they make it into one verb, rape. But other translations will say no, they'll preserve the two verbs. That's huge. That's huge, right? To take two different verbs and just combine them into one is wild. Okay, so some translations will say seize her, as we were saying. Sometimes this word means seize. He seize her and lie with her. So that also sounds like rape, kind of, but at least you got the two verbs there. But like I say, it doesn't have to mean seize. It can mean just lay hold on, or hold, or pick up, or use, or handle. That's sometimes used that way. Okay. So the different uses of that word doesn't mean that. It does not everyone, it's not always rape, you know. What else could I say? One of the major problems with this idea is that they just go to word studies instead of looking at the context. They use this word. Like they'll look at this word tafas and they'll say, "Oh, this word is always used about violent seizure." Well, it's not, clearly, right? And then they try to make that word carry the whole case. Or they'll use this word ana, humbled her, and they'll say, "Oh, this word is almost always used about rape." Well, I showed you in Deuteronomy 20:14 that it doesn't. It's not, right? So it's more important to look at the case, at the context, at the case law, and the understanding how legal categories are described in the Old Testament, so before we make these kind of claims, okay? The word study is good, but more important than word study is context for determining the meaning of specific words. Okay? So we already know that Moses gave the understanding of force her here. So if he wanted to use that again, he could have easily done that in verse 28, but he did not. He instead said, lay hold on her, tafas. Okay? So the case is being framed totally differently. And just the fact that there's this lexical overlap doesn't change that, okay? With the way we reason about the Bible, we always check the text first, and then we go into those other concerns, such as well, first we start with the text, we start with the context, the syntax, the authorial intent, right? Before we start trying to make word studies that impose this understanding onto the text. What else could I say here? The reason the penalty changes is not the crime, it's the woman's status, right? Betrothed woman I mean, they're trying to say that the reason it changed is because of the status, I should say. Because they say, oh, the betrothed woman, it's like adultery against the husband, so then the man has to die. But for some reason, the woman doesn't have to die, you know? But then, oh, because she was raped. Okay, fine. But then with the unbetrothed virgin, they're saying it's a financial injury to the father. That's why he has to pay the shekels and marry her, right? But it's too reductionistic. Like, it's too simplistic. Because the passage treats betrothed rape as a person who was sinned against, not as mere property. It says she has done. There is in a damsel no sin worthy of death. It's not like just that she's just, oh, her husband got injured, so therefore the man has to die. It's like she's being treated as a real victim who she's innocent, right? And it says that she cried out and no one was there to save her. Right? So they're treating her as a real person. It's not like she's just property. That's their argument, right? The argument from betrothed versus unbetrothed is that these women are just property. So if she's betrothed, that means she's wronged the man, so that he has to die. But in the other case, so it's just the father got wronged. But in either case, the person's wrong, right? But why is it that in this case it's like death, and in the other case it's just marriage? It doesn't make any sense, you know? So in verse 28, we're also rape. Why does this text not talk about those personal features of this woman, that she was innocent, that she cried out, or etc.? Let's talk about any of that. It says that they were found. It uses that language, right? And the remedy looks like it's like you know, it's as if they have done something wrong, and that requires some kind of obligation on their part to fix what they've done wrong. Yeah. So the best reading of this verse 28 to 29 is that it's illicit sexual intercourse with an unbetrothed virgin. She's like compromised, you know, but it's not violent rape. And so the law binds the man to pay restitution to marry her, and a lifelong ban on divorce because he has dishonored her. It's kind of like a ancient Hebrew like shotgun wedding, you know. So it's just a stronger reading. It's just the context, the other text in Exodus 22, 16 to 17, and all these other features that I just talked about. It's the much stronger reading. All right. I don't care how many other translations might say something else. That doesn't prove anything, because there is dispute among the translators. Okay. So so that was, anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because this verse is constantly mistranslated as though God commanded a girl to marry her rapist. But that reading is not forced by the text. And in the immediate context, violent rape is already described in verses 25 to 27. Excuse me, with explicit language talking about force, the woman crying out, no one saving her, and the act is compared to murder. You know? So that's how serious it is in those texts, 25 to 27. But then in verses 28 to 29, the whole framing changes. You know, it's talking about like they be found. The two of them are found. The two of them are found, right? And then money is paid. And then marriage is demanded, and no divorce is allowed. Okay, it's a totally different framing. There's no reason to think that they're the same thing. And Exodus 22:16-17, it gives us another case which is very, very similar. It may not be the exact same law, but it has the same analogous legal measures, okay? Where the Torah clearly has this sort of, I don't know, procedure for this type of situation where you have unlawful intercourse between an unbetrothed virgin and a man, all right? And there's also, you have the bride price is in view here, and the father's authority is in view here, and marriage is in view here. So the issue is not whether sexual wrongdoing has occurred here. Of course it has, but the issue is whether it's violent rape or whether it's seduction. And the seduction explanation is just better. It's just much more parsimonious. Much like in terms of if we compare these according to our previous analysis based on inference to the best explanation, this is the much better explanation. It's got more explanatory scope, more explanatory power, right? Less ad hoc assumptions. And what was the other thing? I forget. Oh, and the fit. It fits the other details. Like it fits Exodus 22:16-17. It fits the other details we know from the law. So it's just a better interpretation, okay? So I don't know. I don't know if that was too boring, but I hope that helped you guys understand that passage. I'll clip this later. But for people who want to try to make this into something like, you know, it must be rape, well, this is completely ignorant and wrong. And I'm very sorry for the NIV. You know, for anyone who thinks the NIV is some great translation, well, it may be all right in some areas, but it's very weak in certain areas like this one. Okay, so the big thing to me is the idea that in Exodus 22, the guy, it says that he could just refuse to let them marry. He just refused it. He doesn't want it. But in Deuteronomy 28, that's known to be seduction, right? But in 22-28, in Deuteronomy 22-28, doesn't say that. So they have to get married? A rapist? It's completely backwards, you know? So anyway, I don't know. That's my explanation for that guy. That guy's. Yeah, now I'm more equipped when I hear the whole Bible comes rape bullying. I know exactly, dude. Absolutely obscene. The way these people fight for this interpretation, because it gives them a thing. Like they hate the Bible, you know. They need to find these type of things to say against the Bible, so they'll just jump on it and just try to preserve this thing no matter what, you know. I don't know if were you guys here when I was talking about who was it? Oh, it was those guys, Derek and them were talking about Ezekiel 20. What was it? 20:25. Wherefore I gave them also statutes that were not good and judgments whereby they should not live. This is talking about he gave them statutes, and they were like doing child sacrifice, right? And it says that I gave them also statutes. So these guys try to say that, oh, look, God told them to kill little kids, you know, but it's just ridiculous. Like that's obviously not what he's talking about. And if you look at, I explained it in the other video. If you see the one I did last week about Myth Vision TV, but I'll make a clip of it. But absolutely insane. I know the unsaved, man, the atheists and stuff, they hate it, man. They hate the Bible, dude. Wicked, dude. Anyway, what are you guys up to, man? What do you guys want to do now? You want to watch some videos? I don't do too much reaction stuff, but we could do a little bit. Let me see what's going on. Down for some videos? All right, bro. Let's check it out. J-Dyer versus Captain Saryak.
He says, "Hey, Captain, would you like some cheese with the wine and..." Okay, let me read this again.
It was
Hey,
it was
Cap,
mostly.
would you like some cheese with the
ad-homs
wine
and
you were
cursing.
having while your feelings were
What
taking
a
over
mess.
because of being called a name? Okay, and you reply to that, Cap. He's basically saying that you were whining. Okay, fair enough. All right. Let me see what else we.
What's your question, sir? What's your question? Go ahead.
Yeah, let the brother finish it.
Even the ones that, because okay, so the word hekakasus is used for any foreign chieftain. So any, like he said, elite person that's a foreigner. So when they began to dwell in Egypt and they rule for a period of time, by the time that it gets to Manetho is 3rd century. Remember, these people was ruling 1,000 years before him almost. So by his time, that name is I'm forgetting the word, but that name is identified for a group of people that came from out of them. It says it in Josephus. It says this whole tribe became known as the Hekakasus. Why? Because they was foreign rulers and they was foreign. They was captive kings or something like that. And then he explains it. You got to read the Josephus though, but I ain't from the.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, before
But
y'all get started though, is my screen still sharing?
No, not yet.
I want
But
to
I'll
Do you have a question, King Tan? Go for it, man. What's your question, bro? Anyway, I'm gonna check this thing out. This is kind of boring. Let me see what else we got here. What did Paul mean in 1 Corinthians 6:11 where he said, "Such were some of you"? Yeah, not everyone was considered those things, right? So, for example, let's just take a look at it. But, as such were some of you. So, what he was saying is that, know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators nor idolaters, etc. Right? These sins, the list of sins, the list of sinners, so thieves, covetous. So these people are that category. It's not about people who do this, but the people who are this. They are thieves, they are covetous, they are drunkards, they are revilers, right? They shall not inherit the kingdom of God. It says, and such were some of you, because not everyone in Corinth is a drunkard and a thief and a covetous, right? Not everyone is an adulterers, idolaters, etc. There's some people in Corinth who were probably conservative Greeks, they didn't get into all this stuff. The Greek culture had a lot of stuff, like they would, for example, fornication. Greek culture, they didn't really look down on people for going to visit prostitutes or what have you. But there were also many Greeks who would teach their kids, don't do that, just because they would say, oh, it's just bad for you. They don't have a moral prohibition in their religion. They would just say it's bad for you, don't do it, So for that reason, they would often avoid that. So that's why he says, such were some of you. That is, not everyone in Corinth is like those sinners, but many of them were. And many of them still were even now. Even though he says such were some of you, that they previously were like that. They previously were fornicators, idolaters, etc. Actually, many of them still are. And he talks about many of these sins in the letter, right? The drunkards. There's drunkards going to the Lord's Supper in 1 Corinthians 11, he talks about it. There's covetous in the sense that they're fighting about who. Oh, I was baptized by Paul. I was baptized by Apollos. That's covetousness. You know? And then he talks about fornicators. Well, later in this chapter, he talks about people going to visit prostitutes. Know ye not that your bodies are the members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them the members of an harlot? God forbid. Because some of them were doing that. They're visiting fornicators, right? I mean prostitutes. So he's saying they're washed, they're sanctified, they're justified because they've been saved, not because they stopped doing these sins, right? So that's important to know as well. So I hope that helps, King 10. I don't know, but let me know. Let's go back, see what else we got here. These guys are debating or something. BibleQandA.
Wait there. And when there's room, we'll get you up.
This is verbal combat. Brutality. Get over here! You will never win.
What do you think about this Nancy Guthrie case? You guys think that's anything? There's got one or three divine persons. Oh man, these guys are oneness guys.
Lord, okay, great. I'll give you that. Okay, and that flows into my theology. That proves my theology. Okay, because this is not the Father, obviously. Okay, so if this is not the Father and this is a messenger of the Father, but yet he is still claiming to be the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that therefore means that either there's another.
I remember this guy. I was debating this guy for like 4 hours about this thing, man. Or no, it was debating him about like FreeGrace, right? But he's like a oneness or something.
God, or that's Jesus.
Why do we have to be? Why are we limited to those options, Mitch?
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because in John 1:18 it says, "No one has ever seen God," referring to the Father, and I can show you the context of that. But it is the only begotten God in the Greek. It says the only begotten God, referring to the Son, has revealed him to us. So you can laugh, you can smirk, you can do whatever you want to, you can mock, whatever, but that's what the Bible says. I'm not talking about you, but I'm hearing chuckling. I don't know who that is.
You know what his argument here is? Because you know how in John says, no man has seen God, right? The only begotten Son who was in the bosom of the Father, he had declared him, right? So no man has seen God, but except the Son. So that's why people will make the claim that all the appearances of God in the Old Testament are actually Jesus, you know, like this, for instance, right? Which may be the case.
So if we continue to go on,
I'm not sure about that, because I feel like sometimes, in Exodus 33, talks about how God, like Moses was trying to ask God to appear to him or to show him his glory, he says, I think. See, and he said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory, right? Moses is talking to God, Exodus 33. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy to whom on whom I will show mercy. And he said, thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. But it's like, see my face. So you can't see his face, but you can see his back, right? That, behold, there's a place by me, thou shalt stand upon the rock. So my glory passes by thee. I put thee in the cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I will take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts. My face shall not be seen. So it's kind of like, okay, if it's Jesus, like, why does he have to do that? You know, if that's all it was, why does he have to do that, right? So that's, I don't know about all that argument that it's Jesus always, but sometimes let's say the angel of the Lord. Whenever the angel of the Lord appears, that's Jesus, which is also interesting. I'm not sure about this one, but the angel of the Lord idea, that's possible. That's more kind of reasonable. And also, you know, Daniel chapter 4, when they're in the, or is it Daniel chapter 3? I don't know. It's chapter 3, when they're in the furnace and the Son of God appears, that sounds like Jesus, right? So I don't know. Let's see, guys. What do we got here? This is super boring. What's Layman doing?
And then God is not true, you know. But during that time that person believed, that person worship, that person, you know, do many things, trying to transform, you know, trying that he become or she become transformed life, like that person's old life be transformed into a new man, you know, like that. But when suddenly happened, you know, and then, no, God is not true, because instead of transforming me and become like this, like that. But hey, guys, it's not God's fault. It's your fault. You don't want to be transformed. Because you
keep talking to them. I got to go get my inhaler. I'll be back.
Why you make me? Why you make me big?
Let's take what's talk with them right there.
Any other worldview on a very deep metaphysical level will eventually collapse without that. Also, creation ex nihilo. So that rules out basically everything but the Abrahamic gods, at least when we're looking at religions with public, historic divine revelation.
I'm not trying to be troublesome.
Yes, you are.
But
Tacos. Just
no, not at all.
Just
but
own it.
I did not understand a bunch of the words you used there.
That's fine.
Could you maybe go back through there and
all Lord wants to put a is necessary. When the live on involved, having I told my justification in the opening and in the closing. I was trying to get T-Jump to actually answer questions that follow the line of inquiry, but it didn't go anywhere. But I think we got enough. But sure, again, having a divine conceptualist approach, that which is universal, immaterial, and conceptual can only be grounded in an immaterial, universal mind. We have divine revelation, a revelatory.
All right. So they're talking about, the debate is about whether atheism or Christianity can justify knowledge. Okay, this is kind of like this argument that like the laws of logic and knowledge itself, truth itself, is this concept which is like metaphysical. It's not part of the physical world. It's part of the metaphysical world. And so it relies on some kind of metaphysical being, like some kind of transcendent being like God, to ground this idea, you know? And knowledge doesn't have that ability. Let's see what this guy says. He debated Kurt one time. I came on afterwards, and there was a good discussion. He's a pretty smart dude. He knows his stuff, kind of. He's a little bit wrong on a few things, but he's all right.
Epistemology that makes it a theonomous. We have divine revelation, a revelatory type of epistemology that makes it a theonomous epistemology rather than an autonomous epistemology, so we can actually justify the use and appeal of all of these different categories, whereas a non-theonomous epistemology, when they attempt to do that, they do so in an unjustified way, and it has to be the orthodox.
So because we have a God, he can ground us. He can ground the idea of the laws of logic, or truth itself, or math, or these type of non-material things, non-material concepts, because he's a non-material mind. Without a non-material mind, there's nothing to ground those concepts in. That's the idea, right? So he is talking about theonomous epistemology. That is an epistemology that's based on theonomy, is like God law, okay, or God ruled. So it's like a theonomous epistemology can ground logic and knowledge and stuff, whereas non-theonomous or atheistic epistemology, that is epistemology is like the theory of knowledge, that cannot ground that type of thinking.
Orthodox Christian God, for a variety of reasons, it really is almost, you could make a whole other debate about it, but some of the few is the essence energy distinction is needed to do the metaphysical grounding work. Hierarchical Trinitarian theology is necessary to do the grounding work, and a Trinity specifically, one, because it solves the problem of the one and the many, that a universe that has multiplicity and unity has to also be grounded in a God that expresses multiplicity and unity. And we get to a triad. This is a very rough, probably butchered explanation, because it's a very in-depth topic. St. Maximus goes into it, but ultimately a strict monotheism, that there's only one hypostasis, a single hypostasis, that is also all
like the Muslim God or the Jewish God, there's only one being, right? Without any personality, any multiple persons. So they're not able, so they're able to ground the notion of one single thing, but they're not able to ground the notion of multiple things, multiplicity. That's why the Trinity God is able to explain the universe we live in better than those type of understandings of the one God.
All loving and all Lord, which also needs to be the case to do the grounding work.
Even the fact that the God of the Bible is loving, and he is love, right? It implies that there's some kind of thing for him to love before the creation, right? Whereas, so within the Trinity, you can see that they loved each other, but outside of the Trinity, there's no basis for that, right? So if you have, who did God love who did the Jewish God love before he created? Who did the Muslim God love before he created? There's no answer to that, right? That's the type of thing.
Work, it would have to be all loving and all Lord over what? Then if there's only two, there's dualism and kind of a competing powers, so that doesn't work. The triad is the perfection, the numerological perfection that allows for ultimate spiration within God himself, that he is from God through the Son in the Spirit, and any other worldview on a very deep metaphysical level will eventually collapse without that. Also creation ex nihilo. So that rules out basically everything but the Abrahamic gods, at least when we're looking at religions with public historic divine revelation.
I'm not trying to be troublesome.
Yes, you are.
But
just
no, not at all.
Just own it.
I did not understand a bunch of the words you used there.
That's fine.
Could you maybe go back through there and define some of those words as you're going through there?
Like which one?
Like spiration and all the stuff leading up to spiration.
Yeah,
and
the eternal relations,
this perfection thing, how this perfection thing is. Because to me, that didn't really sound like a straight or easy to understand answer.
Right.
I don't think God is coherent. And
I
want to understand what you're saying. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. But to me, that didn't sound that was coherent.
Right.
I'm not like attacking you. I'm just saying I want to try to understand what you're saying. Right.
Okay, fair enough. Fair
And
enough. So
real fast, there are a couple super chats. So Gretchen, I did time cafe out in chat for 5 minutes. He is unmuted now, though that 2 minutes had passed. And Nitty asked, did Jesus embody a particular body or universal?
Yeah, Christ embodied a particular body.
Cool. And then I'd really appreciate it if you could
Yeah,
provide like a coherent
specifically, what did you
response
want cleared up?
I don't feel like you really gave a good definition of justification. And then there was like a bunch of stuff you said about like spiration and other said something about perfection.
Yeah,
I'd like you to maybe define those words you're using, and then maybe even some of the words that you're using that might be like common use words, but are like being used not how somebody would commonly use them.
Such as what?
I don't know. Whatever, in whichever cases you might use that like that, right?
No, but you gave the example of me using common words in a way other people don't use them, so I'm just looking for specifically what you meant.
I mean, I have some examples of that.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's Leo. Yo, Ellie, actually, I have a question for you. When you say grounding, what type of grounding do you mean? Do you mean metaphysical, epistemic, ontological? What type of grounding is in the notion of God? And how does that report towards the epistemics of your coherence theory of truth?
So before we start jumping into questions, what I wanted to say is you use the terms theonomous epistemology and autonomous epistemology. Those terms are found nowhere in academic epistemology, so I don't know where you're getting those terms from.
It is found in biblical scholarship.
It's found in theological epistemology. What are you talking about? Those terms are found nowhere in academic epistemology. What a joke.
Scholar papers in Bible Mills. Yeah, this on there.
Yeah, but that's not like that's not academic epistemology. I don't consider that academic epistemology.
Of course, it's academic. What are you talking about? This guy's trying to say it's not. I should go on here, man. Let me go on here, guys.
Apple, and so I'm just curious. Because I don't see why when we're talking about like, well, okay, I saw it and there's maybe a category or a theory or system level or more fundamental analysis. I don't see why we have to get back into these logical systems of beliefs because there is a particular apple that seems like really accessible to a lot of people.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what the question was specifically, but I guess what I'm saying is that in order to identify and predicate a particular apple, there has to be a universal actually several universal principles and notions that go into the possibility of doing that at all.
Wait, isn't it possible just in virtue of there being no contradictions? Like that's what it means to be possible.
You have a
theory. Well, okay, talking about contradiction presupposes the law of non-contradiction.
That's my theory.
I don't think that's true. Dialetheists would reject that.
I don't care what other people would reject. I'm just looking for
well,
argument.
but it's not about whether you care. It's just about that. Well,
I know, but
clearly
present
isn't
the argument.
true. If there are instances, I don't need an argument. It's just not true.
He's
that
talking about
the contradictions only exist.
I don't need an argument.
It's
just not true. That's the state of things.
Yeah, I don't need to present any sort of like argument for that. I don't need a rigorous argument. That's just like known by anybody with even the remotest understanding of formal logic, which you clearly don't have.
Hang on one second, y'all. We got a
He's just
couple
presenting a
super
non-standard
chats.
logic. He's just presenting another non-standard logic, like I mentioned before. And saying
Let the man read his super chats.
Yes, Robin says theonomous epistemology is divine command theory.
Anyway, this is dumb. What was this thing? Sorry guys, this is kind of getting boring. What do you guys think? Do you guys want to go? Do you guys want me to go back on and try to get on there? They weren't letting me on, so I just left. There's no good reason to be Muslim.
So then he can have a body that belongs to himself.
I don't know what you mean by belongs to himself.
That belongs to him.
Like, what does that mean?
That he uses.
I guess.
So he can do that.
Yes.
Okay. That's what Christ did. He took on a body that belonged to himself.
But how can God die though?
Death, what do you think it means to die? Do you think that it means you just like stop existing?
No.
Death is just like
when
separating from your body. And what God does is he
That's
takes
true. That's correct. If you were trying to say death is separating from your body, right? And also, he's separated from his physical body as his human nature, right? It's not like his God nature died, right? So what we say in the Trinity doctrine is that the person of Jesus Christ, who is God, died in his human nature. His God nature did not die because God cannot die, right? But he's still, the person who is God died in his human nature. That's the idea.
He takes on a body and separates from it. But he doesn't like stop existing. When we say that God died, we're just saying that God took on a body and separated from that body.
But that's true. Death in the Bible is separation. You know, like in the garden, God said, if you eat of the fruit, that day you shall surely die. They are separated from God in that day. And then if you read James 2:26, it says that as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So when the body is separated from the spirit, it is dead, right? So separation is death.
All right, I guess.
So why aren't you Christian?
I just can't believe a man could be God.
You don't believe that God can just like take on a human nature for himself?
I mean, I believe God can do that. I don't believe God did do that.
I'm not worried about the God did do that part. As a matter of fact, I am actually worried about the God did do that part. Like God himself in the previous scriptures was saying he was going to do that. Why would you not believe in him if he says that?
Do we have the previous scriptures?
Yeah.
Where?
You have the Torah, you have the Injil, you have the Psalms, you have the Zabur.
Those are corrupted.
How you know that?
Because the Quran says so.
The Quran says so, therefore it's true.
Yes.
Why should we? As a matter of fact, when the Quran confirms the previous scriptures, is it just confirming previous corrupted scriptures?
Yeah, that's the thing. The Quran actually confirms the previous scriptures. It says, tell the people of the book to check what Allah has revealed in their scriptures, in the gospel, in the Injil, as they say, or in the Torah. Okay, so the Quran is telling Muslims that the Bible is legit. You know, it's not saying that it's like just corrupted. It's not.
Conscious edits.
So it's confirming things that are edited or just like things that are corrupted?
Yes.
So when it says, if you have doubts, go to the people of those who read the previous scriptures, it's telling you to go back to people who have corrupted scriptures if you have doubts.
It's talking about Muslims.
Yeah, telling you to go back to the Muslims. Sorry, telling the Muslims to go back to these people.
No, but it's talking about Muslims who converted.
No,
and
it's not. That's not what it's saying. Anyway, this is foolish. Anyway, you know what? This is kind of like, this is actually kind of interesting, but actually, this is.
Is it telling those Muslims who converted to go back to the previous scriptures which are corrupted?
No, it doesn't say previous scriptures. It says go back to.
Do you want me to read it for you?
It says
because I can. Do you want me to show it to you?
Sure.
All right. What's it say right here? So if you, prophet, as a matter of fact, it's talking about the prophet. If you, prophet, are in doubt about what we reveal to you or the stories which we have revealed to you, ask those who have been reading the scriptures before you.
Exactly.
The truth has come to you from your Lord. So be not in doubt.
Yeah, and you know, that has to be the Bible or the Torah, like the Bible, right? Basically, because at that time when Muhammad heard these things, it wasn't written down. It was just he was hearing them. So he's hearing this thing told to him that he should, if he doubts it, go and check those other scriptures, you know? So it must be referring to the Bible. It must. There's no other scriptures.
Exactly. It's saying to go back to those who have read the scriptures before you, but those people are now Muslims.
Why is he going back to them?
Because they read the previous scriptures.
Wait, and it's telling them, why is he going back to them? Because he has doubts, right? Or if he has doubts.
Yeah.
Why? And if he has doubts,
Muhammad never had doubts.
I'm not worried about him having. I am actually having doubts.
He never had doubts.
I'm not saying he did or didn't. I'm saying if he did, he would go back to them to see if the thing that Allah revealed to them is actually true, or to relieve.
How are you doing, brother? God bless you, man. We're just watching some videos and stuff, just hanging out. I'm gonna shut it down soon, but we're just chilling for now.
His doubt.
But this is a hypothetical. You never had.
Regardless, the hypothetical is being addressed here. And you got so many other scriptures that say you got nothing to stand on unless you stand on the previous scriptures.
It's not referring to the Muslims.
Who is it referring to?
The Christians and the Jews.
How is it referring to the Christians and the Jews if the Christians and the Jews scriptures are the thing it's telling you to stand on?
Wait, say that again?
How is it referring to the Christians and the Jews if it's telling you to go back to their scriptures and you can't stand on nothing else unless you stand on their scriptures?
What does it say? Muslims need to read the previous scriptures.
All right, let's.
All we need is the Quran
So then why is it telling you that you have to go back to these scriptures?
to confirm the stories.
So you confirm story. Wait. So you confirm stories with corrupted scripture?
We can't confirm them now. They're corrupted.
Wait. So do you confirm your stories with corrupted?
Now he's changing it, right? Here you see, before he was saying that it was corrupted in Muhammad's time. Now he's saying it's corrupted now. You know, this is different. By the way, and this is Muhammad's time is the 7th century, right? So you can't just we know what the text was in the 7th century. We have text from that period, you know, so we know what it said. It wasn't different. Oh yeah, for sure, brother. I know it's late for you. Hey, God bless, bro. Have a good night, okay? God bless. Thanks, bro.
Corrupted books?
No.
So when it tells you to do this, were they corrupted at the time
That's
that it was?
for the Muslims at
Hold
the
on.
time.
So at that time, was it corrupted?
Wait, hold on. That's for the Muslims. At the
Was it
time.
corrupted at that time?
Yes.
So then it's telling them to do something impossible, or telling them to go back to corrupted scriptures at that time?
Yes.
You confirm corrupted. You confirm your scriptures with corrupted scriptures?
Alhamdulillah.
Yallah.
Alhamdulillah.
You just confirm your scripture. You confirm your scriptures with corrupted false things, huh?
Allahu
Only God knows. Only God knows, huh?
One God.
There be one God is telling you.
But you still didn't answer my question though.
I'm actually weak. I appreciate you coming up, bro. That's so insane. If you guys are enjoying the live, I see that there's 142 of you guys so far. If you guys are enjoying the live, go ahead and drop a follow. Keep tapping the screen link live. And if you guys are enjoying even more, go to the YT link in my bio and watch from there. What's up, bro?
Yeah, so to you know what? Why aren't you Christians? For the simple fact that a man coming onto this earth and manifesting himself to be God or proclaiming to be God is something that no Muslim could adhere to. It doesn't make it sort of logical sense, or it's not within God's nature to do so.
Why is it not within God's nature to do so?
Because God can't limit himself to be a man.
Who says he's limiting himself?
Well, he did eat, did he not?
It's not limiting himself.
Of course it is. It shows that
it's not, because he still has the power of God.
Yeah, but he has the necessities, right?
Nope.
To eat, to defecate.
No, these things are not necessary to
breathe.
No one says these things are. No one said that these things are necessary. Like he literally goes into a desert for 40 days without eating or drinking. No one says these things are necessary.
So are you saying that Jesus walking this earth could go without food?
Yes.
For months?
Yes, he literally does that for a full month. He says it literally says that he went without eating for an entire month and 10 days, 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay, so if he's going for 41 months, he could still do it.
41 months. Yes,
he
can.
40 days, or 40. You say 41 days.
I said 40 days.
Okay, so if he goes to 41 days, he could still survive.
Yes.
Now he's doing
if he can survive, like you do realize.
I understand your logic, but chillax. But this 40 days, he's doing it with what? With the power of God.
Yeah, because he is.
That's interesting, you know, because 40 days, people can do that, right? People can like not everyone, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility that a person could not eat for 40 days if they have water, right? But this person suggesting that Jesus didn't even need food at all, or he could have gone without food forever, which is also true in a sense, but I don't know, because Jesus is a human being too, you know, so. Well, the guy said that God cannot limit himself to be a man. But the question is, why can't God do that? You know, and this person's saying, well, no, he never limited himself. Well, it does say he humbled himself, right? In Philippians 4. But it's true that he never he has all the attributes of God, like he's omnipotent, omniscient, etc., right? But then maybe in another way, maybe he isn't. I don't know. It's kind of different because it's two natures. Because that's why. So in his human nature, he was limited. In his human nature, right? But in his other nature, he isn't limited. That's why he's able to limit himself, because in his one nature he's not limited at all, and then in human nature he is, you know.
He is God.
The Father, with the ability of the Father allowing him to do it?
Not because he allowed him to do it, but because he himself is God.
Okay, where are you getting this from? Show me, please.
The very book that talks about him going to the desert for 40 days.
Yeah, show me that he didn't have food. He didn't have food for 40 days, please.
I got you.
So somebody, while you're looking that up also, so somebody who doesn't eat for 40, that can go out without eating food for 40 days, he'll become God, is what you're saying?
Who said that?
I'm just asking.
I was literally just saying these things are not necessary to.
Show me, please.
There you go.
What's the passage?
Matthew 4. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and after fasting for
one second. He was tempted. God was tempted by who?
By the devil.
So
now can I finish reading?
No. 1 second.
Can I finish reading?
You can in a second.
No, I'm going to finish reading.
How can God be tempted by the devil?
You can try to tempt God. It doesn't mean that God is going to succumb to it.
So temptation is a limitation, isn't it?
No, that's not. But regardless, like I'm going to finish I'm going to finish the verse, meaning that he's attempting to try to do this thing.
How does that work? That you could,
because anyone can try to tempt God.
How?
By saying, God, if you do this, I'm going to do this. That's a temptation. Like outward temptations are a thing. Outward temptations are a thing. That is a temptation. But regardless, that is a temptation. But regardless, like I said, I'm going to finish reading the verse. Okay.
I never knew that guy.
The Jesus is tempted, right? Tempted in all points as we are. He tempted in all points. Hebrews chapter 9, I believe.
He tempted.
Meaning that you can literally attempt to tempt God. Like the word tempt just means to attempt to entice someone. Can I finish reading or no?
What a God do you have?
Can I finish reading?
This is why we're not.
Can I finish reading? Can I finish reading?
Yeah, I'm saying this is why we're not.
Can I finish reading or no?
What was the passage?
Thank you. It says, and after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, command these stones and become loaves of bread. But he answered, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. But 40 days and 40 nights. There you go. Hello?
Yeah, so this is kind of somewhat confusing to me, right? Only because you brought up an interesting point where you stated that the devil could tempt God. It's kind of like...
So the word tempt literally just means to attempt to entice someone. Brother. You can attempt to entice God. That doesn't mean that God is. That doesn't mean that God.
How does the devil entice Jesus?
Attempt to entice, not actually entice.
How did he try to attempt to?
See, I think that's not true because actually Jesus was tempted. He was tempted, but he resisted the temptation, right? Because like in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, it says that. We have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, who was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So that's why these things are kind of interesting and it's okay, right? But thing is, like, you see how he's a smart guy, right? He knows his stuff, but because of the debate format, he doesn't want to lose. So now he's saying things which are kind of against our theology. He's in order to defend his points against Muslims, he's saying things that are actually not proper Christian theology, so that's kind of not that cool, right? So that's why I don't really like these formats. That's why I never done one of these. Oh yeah, because I was talking about that earlier, because I used to be flat earther, but I changed my position. So, are you a flat earther, Socrates himself? Or are you against the position? I used to be a flat earther, but then I decided that it's not really logical or it doesn't really explain the data, such as Southern Hemisphere navigation. Oh, no, sir. Oh, good for you.
What do you mean how? Like he literally just brings up certain things. He says, if you do this, I'll do this for you in return. Like Satan says, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Yes, in this passage, I'm about to give you an example.
Relax, man.
I'm literally trying. You just keep talking, and I'm literally telling you I'm going to give you an example. You got to stop talking. I'm about to give you the example. Okay.
What did he do to God?
I'm about to show.
Yeah, that's true. But then I don't know, man. When you look at, like, for example, I know what you're saying, FreeGrace Frank. So think about this one though, brother. For we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. That means he can be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. He's not just being tempted by the other person, but he's actually feeling the temptation, or it seems like it, right? He was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. You know, because it doesn't really mean much if he was. Oh, no problem. God bless, brother. God bless you. But yeah, so it doesn't mean much to be tempted with sin if you're not actually feeling the temptation, right? Although I do think because he didn't have a corrupted flesh like Adam, like us. He didn't have a sin nature, so called, right? So that is also significant in that discussion as well, but I'm not 100% sure about that. We'll look into that some more.
Show you. You got to slow down. All right, okay? All right, thank you. It says, here, this is one of the things that Satan says. It says, and when he had said these things, or when he had said this to him, all of these I will give to you if you fall down.
I mean, it's I don't know. I don't think it sounded like it was easy because it seemed like he did have a hard time in the desert and all those things. That he went through a hard time, but he still persevered. That was the difference. But you're right. It wasn't like it was different. I don't know. It wasn't like he resisted. He never sinned. That's one thing we know for sure. I would say that he was hungry. It would be a temptation to eat, but never gave into the appetite. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so like when he's hungry, 40 days never ate food, then the devil's like, hey, just why don't you make this stones into bread? You know? And he knows he could do it. He could do it. He could just say stone become bread, and it would become bread. You know? And he didn't do it like that. That takes strength, right? That's strength of will. That's character. Yeah, without the sin nature, that's true. Without the sin nature, he had something like a better nature than ours, for sure. That's true.
Fall down and worship me. This is what Satan says.
So
then I need you to stop talking. Oh my goodness.
I want to understand.
I need you to stop talking.
I want to understand point by point.
I need you to stop talking.
I want to understand.
What do you need to? What do you want to understand?
You're point by point. You're saying that the devil wanted God to worship him.
Yes, he's attempting to try to make Jesus worship him.
Oh my God. What? Go on. This is mind-blowing, man. Go on. Keep on going, please.
And then he continued. Then Jesus said to him, "Be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship and love the Lord your God and serve him only."
So then God is telling the devil, worship me.
Yes, because worship of Satan is wrong.
Okay, go on.
I gave you an example. You asked for an example. You didn't say give me multiple.
No, but I'm saying, how did
are you about to ask me how after I showed you how?
I'm really interested.
Are you about to ask me how after I showed you how?
No, one second, man. I'm really interested in this, bro. You have the devil tempting God by telling him to worship him.
Yes, he's attempting to try to do this thing.
How? What tools does he have at his disposal?
Should I read it for you again? Because I don't know how much more clear I can be on how he did it.
I'm really sincere with this, okay? I'm very sincere. What tools does the devil have at his disposal?
Should we read again? Because I showed you the tool.
Listen to the question and maybe you could give me the answer. If you don't have the answer, it's fine.
Should I read it again? Because the tool was clearly outlined there.
I really, really want to know the answer to this. And I'm not being disingenuous. What tools does the devil have in order to what?
What does that even mean? What do you mean by what tools? Do you think he just had like a hammer there, like a wrench knife? Like what do you think he had?
It could be weapons. It could be
manipulating. Who says you need weapons in order to? Who says you need weapons to protect someone?
I would like to know what tools the devil has in order.
I'll show it to you again. Okay, I'll show it to you again. Maybe I'll read it for you one more time and maybe you'll understand it.
The devil. It says the devil had power over all things on the earth, or something like that. You know, all the kingdoms of the earth were given unto him. Right. Anyway, I gotta wrap it up, you guys. It's getting kind of dry, but I hope that was helpful. That presentation. If you have any questions, let me know. I was a bit tired, so I hope it wasn't too difficult to understand or anything. But let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk soon. And thanks for watching. Oh, that's okay, brother. No problem. Oh, interesting. All right, good. I'm glad you found it interesting. That's good. All right. Well, anyway, I'll talk to you guys about it soon. You can join the Discord. Anyone, Great Night or whatever. Join the Discord, bro. That's okay. No problem, brother. No problem. We'll talk soon, though, guys. All right, well, I'll be back tomorrow night. We're gonna have a hangout and stuff, all right? So if you have any questions or Q&A, we'll talk tomorrow, okay? All right. God bless. Thanks for watching Toronto Bible Study. Hallelujah.
The Holy Bible, the King James Version. The Book of Psalms, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.